way. You don't change that. Nope, that's right.
Of course, I go to as I go live.
Hi.
Hello. Hello, people on YouTube as well. Oh, now here's your crazy piece of millennial news for today, or young news for today. I saw this on Twitter, and my mind basically exploded. There was this rapper whose name is Lil Uzi. His name is Lil Uzi. I don't know why.
That's enough to blow my mind.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, no, like what's crazier is like he legally changed his name to be Lil Uzi. Like he had a normal name, but then changed his name to Lil Uzi. But anyway, he's got a net worth in the millions, right? Well, he's got a very nice house, very nice mansion, very nice cars, right? But recently he bought like a pink diamond that's worth $55 million.
Wow.
Which was a lot of his net wealth. And so he got this pink diamond and bought it, which is more than his cars and his house and everything else. And you know what he did with this pink diamond?
Dropped it down something.
No, he had it surgically inserted into his forehead.
Huh?
So that it rests right in the middle of his forehead.
So is he like Buddhist or something? Or
who knows?
Third eye?
I don't know. He just that's what he decided to do. He decided to
surgically implant a diamond in his forehead.
And surgically implant it. Yes. Right in the middle of his forehead.
Diamond.
Yeah. Yep.
Who did that?
This rapper named Lil Uzi. He's what can I say? The name says it. Oh, a lot. It's pretty wild that happened. But yeah. He's in his
yeah,
I'm doing fine so far. I got a hold of the health department. They said wait 5 days and call them back unless I get sick before then. So what they said was that they didn't want to test for no reason, basically, and I went through that I'd been giving Alex, well, I didn't say his name, but I'd been giving him rides for multiple days and gave him a ride to get tested when he tested positive. But they said, if I'm having symptoms, then they'll go ahead and bring me in and test me, but otherwise call them in 5 days, basically. So Monday I'll call them and see if they still want me to get tested or not. It sounded like probably not, though, unless I have symptoms.
Yeah, they usually don't unless you have symptoms, and they usually they say 3 to 5 days if you're exposed. Usually, it can be 10 to 14, but they said that usually it's within 3 to 5 days.
Yeah, they said that I definitely have to quarantine until then, and after the 5th day, then call them back, and then after 8 days, I don't have to be in quarantine anymore. I think that's what it was.
That's good.
I mean, it's not like they would know if I was in quarantine still or not anyway, but, that's kind of follow guidelines.
Yeah. Well, I hope and pray you don't get it.
Yeah, I hope I don't have it.
Yeah, it would be good. All right. We'll just give it another here. Cheryl that school requires 10 days of quarantine for school if no symptoms. So just different rules all around the place,
Well, unless you get tested.
unless you get tested.
Yeah, if you get tested, you can go back earlier than 10 days.
Ah, neat.
I know, because I did.
Ah, fun.
Still have to wait 5 days or so, don't you, before you test?
Yes, 5 days before you test, and then I got to go back to school after 7 days. After I tested negative.
Gotcha. Well, I guess we will get started then. We're in the book of Zephaniah. And let me tell you, I have learned these minor prophets pretty exceptionally well at this point. That, when I get told now to go to Zephaniah or something, or told to go to Hosea, we spent so much time in the minor prophets that I just hear one of those names. I'm like, oh, minor prophet, easy. After the major prophets, before the New Testament, I spent a lot of time in there. But it's funny because I will admit that sometimes I take some of our discussions here on Wednesday night and shape them into a sermon on Sunday morning for Culpeper. And the other day I got up there to give a sermon, and the people at Culpeper, they're very shameless in their, not that this is anything bad, but they feel no shame in letting me know certain things about my preaching style and how I preach and what I preach over.
They view it as their job to help educate.
Exactly, to help me out. And I got told the other day, they said, well, I don't have any problem with this, but you haven't preached a sermon from the New Testament in almost 2.5 months. And I was like, that's a good point. That bears reflection. Because I had realized that I had been mainly drawing my sermons from the minor prophets. So this week, they're getting a sermon from the New Testament. So we'll see how that goes. Or actually, not this week, but next time I preach there. So, Zephaniah. Last week we spent a lot of time in chapter 1 of the book, talking a little bit about Zephaniah and the context of this, and how, if there's one refrain you could take from the book of Zephaniah, it's very much this idea of the day of the Lord, the day of the Lord, the day of the Lord. It gets repeated often throughout the book, and we talked a little bit about how this is kind of this violent act, and how even though Judah, which is where Zephaniah is located, is kind of turning itself around under Josiah, a good king, this is still the message of God, that everything will be destroyed, everything will be wiped out. We also kind of had a good little conversation about how much the Jews really understand about this final judgment day of what is to come, something that we are very familiar with as Christians, something that we talk about frequently, is this final judgment day. But how much did the Jews really know about that, know about the Messiah, and what that looks like? So then we talked a little bit about how there was this practice among the people of, worshiping God in one breath, and in the next breath worshiping fill in the blank for whatever idol they fit at the time. And so how that balance was occurring, and what that looked like, and what form that took. And then we kind of ended with this idea about, something we were going to come forward and talk about this week is the day of the Lord a good thing or a bad thing? And that seems pretty simple, right? But I'm interested to hear the thoughts about this. Is the day of the Lord as presented here in Zephaniah a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, as presented thus far, it has not been presented as pleasant anyway.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
Pleasant doesn't mean bad necessarily, but we usually associate it with bad.
Yeah, somehow I will utterly sweep away everything from the face of the earth, declares the Lord. Just doesn't sound very, very pleasant, very heartwarming. That's not a movie you're going to see on Hallmark.
At least not with a really good second half
Right,
of the movie.
right. Maybe on History Channel nowadays, because who knows what they're putting on there. But yeah, it definitely hasn't been presented as something pleasant so far, especially if you read later down in chapter 1, specifically like verse 15, or actually we'll start back in 14 because, got to get the day of the Lord language in there. So 14 and 15 says, the great day of the Lord is near and hastening fast. The sound of the day of the Lord is bitter. The mighty man cries aloud there. A day of wrath is that day, a day of distress and anguish, a day of ruin and devastation, a day of darkness and gloom, a day of clouds and thick darkness, a day of trumpet blast and battle cry against the fortified cities and against the lofty battlements. I will bring distress on mankind. Doesn't sound very pleasant, right? Doesn't sound very pleasant at all. But I do think it's important to point out the nuance that Dana brought up, is the idea that just because it's not pleasant and it's not a good thing, that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, right? The Lord is righteous. Therefore, this is not something that is being done in an unjust manner, right? This is not something that just is popping up out of the blue and happening to people for no reason, right? I had a thought and then it left me. So a question I have is, if I think about this long enough, it will come to me. Yes, here it is. Okay. So a question I have about this day of the Lord and this day of wrath, especially presented here in Zephaniah, is this something that has already happened? Is the day of the Lord that Zephaniah is talking about, is that something that already happened? Or is it something that is yet to happen? What do we think?
I think it's yet to happen.
Yeah.
The verse 7,
Mm-hmm.
it says, "This day is coming soon."
Mm-hmm.
He's prepared. He has to sacrifice, which we've seen that.
Mm-hmm.
But he has told his invited guests to get ready.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how the NIV words it. Says,
Just to break in for a second, Geraldine Allen just called, said she didn't know if it was being cast on YouTube. I guess hers wasn't showing it.
It's on YouTube for us. There's 8 people in here now. Can the people on YouTube hear me, see me? Is it loading, working for them?
Okay, I think she said that she was about to try it again. So
Okay,
it may have just, I don't know, been her connection or something.
maybe. Yeah, it seems to be working on our end over here, but
Alrighty.
it is.
Sorry, Jimmy.
Yeah, Cheryl says yes, she can hear us. So there are people on the YouTube broadcast that can see and hear us. So it probably is something on her end, but the YouTube algorithm is weird, so I don't really know. Anyway, Jimmy, back to what you're saying. Yeah, my version says something very similar to yours. I don't use the NIV, but I do use the ESV, about how the Lord has prepared a sacrifice and consecrated guests, which with the added benefit of having seen Jesus in the New Testament, seems to be very clearly pointing to Jesus and his sacrifice. I think that's the point you were getting at there, Jimmy, right?
Yeah, that, and then past that, the ERV mentions those who have already, the guests who are ready for that banquet.
Uh-huh.
The NIV kind of refers to in the next verse. It says, but he says, on that day he will punish all those officials and king's sons and all those clad in foreign clothes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Revelation, it talks about the banquet. Of course, Jesus talked about the banquet.
Yeah.
He said, get ready,
Mm-hmm.
get your clothes on. Something about being ready, and Paul talks about it, Colossians 3, about being ready is just a matter of our clothes are and humble, gentle, and patient.
Yeah.
That's our. So he tells us how to be ready. Just be kind, humble, gentle, and patient. And we are the invited guests. We've learned now through Jesus and the teaching of the apostles. We are the invited guests, and we just have to keep those clothes on to be ready for this day. And it's a great day for us, for all those who are invited to the banquet. For those who are not clad, those in foreign clothes, those who are not ready, don't have these clothes on, they're not kind, they're not humble, not gentle, they're not patient, they don't know Jesus. It will be a bad day.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's talking about the day to come.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely would agree. I think in some of the prophets, the minor prophets especially, you'll read things in the minor prophets and they seem like they apply to Jesus or to us, especially prophecies about the judgment day or things to come, right? And I think in a sense, some of those prophets really do apply to that. But I think something we've seen, hopefully, over this time we've spent together in the minor prophets is that a lot of the prophecies they're making apply very specifically to them in their day. So some of the prophecies they make apply to Israel then, and talking about Assyria or something else. And what we have done is we've come along and basically co-opted them to mean and apply for ourselves. But that's not necessarily something that's wrong, but I think we do a disservice if we don't at least acknowledge that the prophecies were at least initially intended for this. But Zephaniah doesn't seem to be one of those. Zephaniah seems very clearly aimed towards something that he says is near, but at least in our short human lives was far off in the future, right? At least from the point that he makes it, right? Here we are, 2,400 or something years later. That's too much. 2,197. I don't know.
No, so you can make it up.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I just guesstimating here. But here we are so many years later, still waiting on this final day of the Lord, this great day of the Lord that Zephaniah is talking about. And it's very interesting. I think that I totally agree with what you're saying about how Zephaniah very much reminds me of Jesus's parable about the wedding banquet, and later on in Revelation. And there's even stuff that I see in First Peter when I read it that seems like it can be drawn from Zephaniah. And I think there's something really important about that is why it's worth studying the minor prophets. I think this just kind of points to why it's worth looking at this, because Jesus's teachings are not in a vacuum. Paul's teachings are not in a vacuum. When John writes Revelation, it's not in a vacuum. There's all this history accumulated in the Old Testament, written down for us, that they were also drawing from, that they were also using. And so, in a sense, I don't think it'd be far-fetched to say that Jesus borrowed from Zephaniah, or that Paul borrowed from Zephaniah, this language of this great day of the Lord that is to come. And that their teachings and the way they taught were specifically designed to captivate an audience and make them remember what we see here in Zephaniah, and make them go back and look at Zephaniah and say, oh, okay, so this is kind of where the idea is coming from and what this means, which is why I think it's helpful to look at. Hope that's not too far-fetched. But this idea of being prepared is an important one. We see it a lot in the New Testament about, be ready, be prepared. And even here in Zephaniah, we're going to get that same kind of refrain, especially at the start of chapter 2. At the start of chapter 2, Zephaniah spent a lot of time talking about the day of the Lord and what that's going to be like, and how bad that's going to be for the majority of earth, the majority of mankind, and what that deal, so to speak, is going to be like. And then there's this plea almost for the good people, so to speak, or the people of God. It says, gather together, yes, gather, O shameless nation, before the degree takes effect, before the day passes away like chaff, before there comes upon you the burning anger of the Lord, before there comes upon you the day of the anger of the Lord. Seek the Lord, all you humble of the land, who do his just commands. Seek righteousness, seek humility. Perhaps you may be hidden on the day of the anger of the Lord. Another constant refrain in the prophets here. There is this day of judgment coming, this time of swift anger from the Lord that's going to be taken out upon the people. But do good, seek humility, seek righteousness, seek the Lord, and you can be hidden from this anger of the Lord. What stands out to you about those verses there? What's something that we may need to talk about, or that is an important characteristic of those people seeking out the Lord? Or I don't know, maybe I can find a better way to word the question, make it more specific.
Maybe shameless versus humility.
Yeah. I was doing some preparation, I know, shocking, on the book of Zephaniah, doing some preparation on it. And one of the things I found, which, I take everything I read on the internet with a grain of salt because it's coming from the internet. But one of the things that I found was the kind of the thesis or the main point of Zephaniah. And the idea was, the sentence that the author of this article was saying was, the thesis or the main point of Zephaniah is, those seeking humility will find humility. Those seeking selfishness and worldly things will find worldly things. And the idea basically is that if you're seeking the Lord, you will find safety. If you're seeking the world and material things, all you're going to find is the day of the Lord, right? And so, yeah, I think that is an important thing. Yes,
it's interesting that it's specific to the time too. Also, every prophet hasn't always been around when the audience they were going to has been different every time, right? And the audience this time is during a time of great prosperity
Mhm.
and even perceived righteous and holy living
Right.
at the time.
Spiritual
Yeah,
renewal.
spiritual renewal.
Yes.
And yet, basically, he's guarding against that like self-righteous
Yeah.
and proudness of like,
Right.
which previous ones haven't hit my time
Right.
as well, but I think this one hits our
Yeah.
moment in history a little more directly than some of the other experiences that the other prophets at their time or their
Mhm.
audience had been. This audience seems more like us
Oh
than,
yeah.
than the others do.
The others dealt with an Israel that was in total rebellion
Right.
to their God,
Right.
and openly
Completely
rebellious.
turned their backs on God.
These
Didn't
guys
even
are
care.
at least putting on
Heirs.
of being righteous,
Right. You know,
and
these
caring.
people are going to the temple. These people are offering sacrifices. And yeah, they got the stuff on the weekdays where, they're still going to the temples of Baal, but, they're making the effort,
Right.
at least sometimes, right? And I totally agree. That's what makes Zephaniah very interesting is that for the first time, he is dealing with a people that do resemble us. And by us, I mean, American post-Christian behavior, so to speak, or this idea that we are righteous because we go to church and we participate in the Lord's Supper and we do all of this.
But then we practice our other religions through the
Right,
week.
right, exactly. Yeah, and so Zephaniah is prophesying to these people, and the first words out of his mouth is, "I'm going to wipe away everything," declares the Lord, which is a bit of a wake-up call. It's a bit of a wake-up call to people who had gotten so self-absorbed in their own righteousness that they couldn't see past their own nose. And so now Zephaniah is kind of repeating that here, where he says, hey, you think you're righteous, you're shameless in this idea that you are better than those around you, that you're better than the people that came before you, because you think you've had this revival. You think you've had this renewal of hope and trust and faith in the Lord, but you're missing out on a key thing, which is humility. You're missing out on this idea that you're not totally right, which is a very interesting one to explore, especially in our day and age. Any thoughts about that?
It's a hard one.
Yeah.
Because I want to be humble. I seek humility. I want to be humble.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I want to be humble. I believe I want to be humble.
Uh-huh.
But then I got to be careful because I want to think I'm more humble than you are.
Right. Right.
I would be humble.
Yeah. Humility is such a
Known far and wide for my humility.
yeah.
I take pride in my humility.
Yeah. Nothing you can like brag about.
I don't know. Humility is very. I'll just be frank. Humility for me is very difficult, mainly because there are times where I just feel so disingenuous. I don't feel genuine in my humility, because I'm like, well, I'm only doing this because I want to appear humble, right? I don't really know how to explain it, but humility is something very hard, at least for me to practice, because there's the idea, we live in a society, right, in an America that tells you to seek self-advancement first, and that if you do something, we celebrate people like George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. We celebrate these great figures in our history for how great they were, right? Because of these great accomplishments and great things they did. We have a culture that tells us we too should seek to be great. We too should seek to be the greatest you can be in whatever field. I remember when I was in school, when I was younger, way back in like middle school or elementary school, I can't remember now. We were talking about what we wanted to be when we grow up. And one of the refrains of the teacher was that do whatever you want to do, but just be the best at what you do, right? Be the greatest at what you do. And so I think we have a culture that doesn't teach humility, that doesn't teach how to be humble. And so it's very hard, at least for me, when I go to scripture and I say things like be humble, seek humility, because it's so counterintuitive to so much of what I have lived and what I see.
Well, it even goes further than that, that you don't, not only should you be the best you can be, decide if that is the truth about whether you're the best is relative, right? Like
right.
you can make whatever boisterous claim you want, and that's the truth. You didn't even have to be that you're actually the best.
Right.
Like the humility doesn't even, I mean, the self-righteousness does not have to be based in anything actual substance, right?
Exactly.
It is it can be based on nothing at all. We can it's very relative in its self-aggrandizing and self-promotion. It didn't even have to be based on anything real. It just is self-promotion in and of itself, like for the purpose of that.
See, I'll just give
narcissism at its.
I'll give an example here of something that I struggle with even nowadays. Is the correct way. When I was younger, and even nowadays to an extent. Nowadays, I'm an old hat at preaching. I've preached for 5 years at Culpeper, and so I don't give any compliments anymore. But especially when I first started preaching at Culpeper, I would always get compliments like, "Oh, you're really good at what you do. You're so great. Really great sermon." Nowadays, it's like, "What did we talk about?" Right after the sermon, and it's like, "Well, you could have written it down." But anyway, joking aside, I used to get compliments when I preached. People would tell me, "Oh, you're so great at what you do," and everything else, and I never really knew how to handle that because they're complimenting something you're good at. And then I would go and I would listen to these people at Harding who would say, well, when someone tells you that, you should say, well, to God be the glory. And I was like,
that's a little pretentious.
That sounds pretentious. It's like, at the very, base of it all, to God be the glory, right? Yeah. I couldn't do this without the Holy Spirit. But at the same time, right,
Yeah, it sounds like you're puffing up your own sermon like it was so glorious.
Right, exactly. And so I still, to this day, have a hard time with receiving compliments about my preaching because on some level, like, I am proud at the product that I put out there, right? I did work. I spent a lot of time during the week putting it together, crafting it, hoping to reach people, myself included in that. But at the same time, like, how do you fight against arrogance or pride, too much pride creeping in? And you start thinking, well, I'm the greatest preacher there ever was. I don't think that at all. But, it is this creep, this battle between pride that we're all taught we should have pride in what we do, right? You should be proud of what you do.
Too bad Steve's not here today, so because this is one of his soapbox things where he's going to bring up the Whitney Houston song that talks about the greatest love of your life is yourself, and he gets on his soapbox about our culture and its self-love and self-esteem stuff,
right.
I think it's good to see the value in the things that you do, but it's not necessarily the same thing as pride.
Right.
To see what you're doing as something that is worth doing, and see the value in it, but not necessarily have pride in yourself about it. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
I think it goes
not
back.
necessarily be self-important about it.
I think it goes back, like so many other things, to where your heart is.
Yes.
I'm comforted in this passage where he says, seek righteousness and seek humility.
Yeah.
He doesn't say, if you don't got it, it's too late.
Right.
And so you prepare your heart before that happens.
Mhm.
If I have a prideful heart, it won't matter if anyone compliments my sermon or not.
Right.
I know it was good. And
That's great.
and
Yeah.
but if your heart's humble, then it won't matter if they brag on it or
Right.
not. So it's something that it's just like getting angry.
Mhm.
If I'm going to learn not to be angry, I have to prepare my heart beforehand. I can't wait all of it and then say, God, keep me from getting angry.
Right.
I have to recognize that weakness and work on it before
Right.
it happens. And it's the same with humility.
Yeah.
If I want to have it, I can't wait till I need it.
And
I
often
need to develop it earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. And oftentimes with humility, especially whenever I describe humility or try to figure out what humility is, oftentimes I point to individuals that I know somehow intrinsically are, I don't want to say masters of humility, right? Because that seems a little counterintuitive. But people that are genuinely humble, you can point to. And especially as someone who struggles with this concept of humility a lot, there's just something about these people who just do genuine good for goodness sake, don't want to be recognized, don't want to be seen, that you can point to and say, there is real humility there. But sometimes it's a little hard to practice that in return. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people that just come to mind when I think humble, and they're people that don't want to be recognized, don't want to be seen, like probably would be embarrassed if I talked about them.
Holton,
Yes.
the family was all gathered at Grandma's one time, and we were talking about things that were discussed in Bible classes.
Mm-hmm.
And Galen said that he was talking about the Bible class that they were having, and they were talking about sin. And this guy said, that was in the class, said that he could go a whole day without sinning.
Wow. That's some special kind of
I was
confidence right there.
I was so flabbergasted when Galen said that about this guy, that this guy said this. And then, of course, someone piped up, and I think it was Stanley, and said, well, he just sinned because he didn't have humility.
Yeah.
That's good stuff right there.
That is hilarious.
I think that there's also a difference between having self-worth
Mm-hmm.
and being proud.
Yeah.
Because you can be humble and have self-worth
Mm-hmm.
and
Mhm.
think that there is value in what you do without being proud. But
Right.
of course, that could go to your head and it becomes proud. But you have to have some confidence within yourself, otherwise you can't accomplish anything.
Right.
So anyway, I'm just gonna add that a little bit there.
No, that's really, really true. It's just sometimes hard to separate that you the self-worth and then the proud aspect.
I think the reason it's hard is because of things we've already talked about. In our culture, we're
Mhm.
taught where those things should come from, or
Right.
from within.
Right.
And I think God teaches us that we should get those things from Him.
Right.
That we're valuable because we're made in His image
Right.
and we're His children. That's why I'm valuable.
Yeah.
Not valuable because of what I provide.
Right.
I'm valuable because of what He provides.
Mhm.
I'm whatever I'm good at. I was blessed with that talent
Yeah.
from God. I think it comes back to the source from which we derive the having pride in a talent that God gives you because of God is a lot different than having pride in a talent you have because you think you're awesome.
Yeah. one thing that has immensely helped me with my struggle with humility and pride is that I have a friend that I will get a hold of that, in very loose terms, keeps me humble, or at least someone that I can talk to and basically vent and talk about. And at the end of it all, the friend will be like, man, Holton, you sounded very arrogant there, very prideful. And it's just a friend that I trust and I rely on to always give it to me straight and always kind of set me on the straight path when it comes to keeping humble. And I found that very helpful to have someone to lean on and rely on to walk with me as we both seek humility. But it's definitely a difficult thing.
I mean, there's both sides to this too. I mean, there's plenty of people in the world who also, I can't identify with them because I also am very prideful,
Right.
and I struggle with humility as well. But there are people in this world who have problems with self-worth.
Yes.
And the solution to both sides of this is the same. It's God is the one who provides the self-worth.
Right.
Like we are valuable because we are made in God's image and we're his children. And he loved us so much that he sent his son to die for us. The solution is the same. But there's like there's a yin and a yang to the problem.
Okay. So we talk a lot.
Randy, I don't know if y'all remember Randy. Randy used to call it Culpepper's son. He was up here before he got married, and I was talking to him about marriage, and I was looking at the curtains behind you, and it made me think of Randy was at our house, and Cam and I were in Clinton, and we were moving curtains around on the windows. I was moving curtains around, and I wanted 3 panels on this window, and Cam wanted 2, or vice versa. But I really pushed it. He probably thought, oh, he's going to observe a marriage fight here, an argument of these panels on the window. So I pushed it, but in the end, I said, she gets her way. And she got her way. I think humility is not getting your way. It's not, I don't see it as a feeling, a communication, these things that some people are better at than others in how they present themselves or how they phrase words or how they, the tone of voice and everything we think of goes with humility. That's not it. It's that you give in. You give in when you want your way. But you give in to your brother or sister or your wife. Especially your wife. Humility is not having our church. The church isn't like Burger King. The church is not that we should get our way. The church is, we should do everything we can to be humble, to give in to others, to see that they get their way, to encourage them, even if we got to be careful with each other in that way and think about others. That's not easy to do. I mean, you're going to make mistakes, but that's all right. I think Stan already said that. You seek it. We know what we need to seek. So if we mess up, we just keep seeking.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a really important one because I think sometimes we can lose sight of the fact that humility, like so much else in Scripture, isn't just a thought, isn't just a behavior. It is an action, and it is basically the action of giving in, letting someone else have their way, like you're saying there. And so we can sometimes hide the fact that we're not humble at all by pretending to be humble with our words or with our thoughts. But at the end of the day, true humility is deeds. True humility is action. Something about the homework for this week, and obviously, I want to tie it to something like with humility, but I don't really know what it look like.
Go forth and be more humble.
Go-
Yeah, it's like
Yeah, exactly. And going and being like, do a humble deed, right? And then let's come and talk about it next week. It just doesn't seem, like the best thing to do.
About how humble we were.
Yeah, let's all come back and talk about how humble we were this past week. Pat ourselves on the back.
Let's name one humble thing we did.
Yeah. So maybe what we can do instead is,
Talk about where you were humble.
or we all have people in our life that we deal with. Talk about if a family member, friend, or coworker, I mean, anyone really was humble, and what that interaction was like, whether towards yourself or something you observed happening. Because a characteristic of truly humble people I've noticed is they don't talk about their good deeds a lot. And so, we can talk about it for them. So just keep in your life, friend, family, coworker, person in Walmart that was humble, and just talk about what made that act humble, how that interaction went, why you thought that was a humble act, and we'll talk about that instead of talking about ourselves. We'll encourage other people even if they don't hear it. So, does that sound good? All right, announcements. If you have any on YouTube, feel free to type them out and I'll read them. If you have any over here on Zoom, feel free to interrupt me when I'm done. Okay. Upcoming events this Sunday, February 7th, $1 a month for Southern Christian Home. Also, February 7th is Super Sunday for Super Bowl Sunday. We'll collect cans of soup for Joseph Storehouse. It's Super Sunday, so they're going to be collecting cans of soup for Joseph Storehouse to coincide with the fact that the Super Bowl is being played this Sunday, which is a good reminder that the Super Bowl is being played this Sunday. And also, we'll be collecting soup. That's a joke. Soup is important. All right, Joseph Storehouse items needed this week: peanut butter jelly, saltine crackers, and soup. Refer back to the Super Sunday. Some of the prayers that we got from the storehouse today. Rick Sample, somebody we've mentioned a lot, had a doctor appointment today, or not today, over the past week, and he got some good reports back. Linda Goins has continued to ask that we keep Doris Burke in our prayers. She's a regular there at this food bank, and she has been having some health issues. There's this man named Adam whose family had COVID, and we prayed for him last week, and he came back this week and told us that his family is doing better. So, that's a great prayer request answered. We also want to remember in prayer Annette Clute is in the local hospital with diverticulitis. She should get to go home tomorrow or Friday. Shirley Schmidt, Debbie Clute's mom, has decided not to take any more treatments. Hospice is being called in to make her comfortable. Jess Medine, Don Clute's brother-in-law, who lives in Phoenix, isn't doing very well and has now been put on a ventilator. Aline Reese, Gary Reed's sister, has had some stomach issues for over a week. She's feeling pretty low physically and mentally. The doctor has run some tests, but they have not heard any results. Marcus Smith will be having a cardiac stress test. He asked for prayers for a good outcome. We want to continue to remember Joyce James, who will have surgery this upcoming Monday. Is that right, Joyce? We'll assume so. Barbara Dunham of the Choctaw congregation, who has COVID, and Sue Vasisek a friend of Stephen Cheryl Smith, who is in the Tulsa hospital with COVID and is not doing well. We want to continue to remember those who are in quarantine with COVID or quarantine because of contact with someone who has had it. There's so many that we need to remember.
Yes, my surgery, I found out today it's probably going to be about 8:30 Monday morning.
Yeah. Hopefully you are back before any potential snow or ice hits
Yes.
Clinton,
Yes.
because that would not be good. I know that they are potentially calling for some of that next week. So we will keep you in our prayers as well. Anything else? All right. Would you pray with me? Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day and thank you for your many blessings, God. We're so thankful that we have this time to spend together with each other and spend together with you, Lord. Help us to deepen our relationship with each other, grow closer to you, God. Lord, help us to seek humility in our lives, Lord, to fight against everything that it seems our culture tells us about putting ourselves first and having a prideful attitude, Lord. But help us to have a servant's heart and to be transformed into what you imagine, Lord. Lord, help us to do and walk with Jesus in everything that we do. We want to thank you for Jesus, and it's in his name that we pray. Amen. All right. Adios, amigos. See you all
Good night.
on the flippity flip.
Flippity flop.
Flippity flop.